You have my sword.
And you have my bow.
And my axe.
It is the stuff Hollywood dreams are made of.
Like ridiculously amazing. Like I've never seen something so great.
Fantastic creatures.
Smeagol! No, not poor Smeagol.
Stunning special effects.
Prepare for battle!
Bold heroes caught up in an epic battle between good and evil.
It's like he took everything out of all the fans' brains, imagination, everything, and put it up on screen.
What can you see?
It is time.
By any measure, the Lord of the Rings trilogy is an astonishing success. Nearly $3 billion at the box office, 30 Oscar nominations, including a Best Director nomination this year for Peter Jackson.
Did you ever anticipate, ever expect this kind of success?
No, it's beyond our wildest dreams.
But this, after all, is Hollywood, and the story of how this unassuming lad from New Zealand, who at age 42 hates wearing shoes and long pants, became the highest paid director in history, plays out like a big screen fairy tale.
I fell in love with stories watching a British television puppet show called Thunderbirds when it first came out on TV about 1965, so I would have been 4 years old. I used to play with my little dinky toys, little cars and trucks and things, and I used to create emergency scenarios like Thunderbirds used to have.
Some people never find their calling in life. Peter Jackson never even had to look for his.
My parents got a Super 8 movie camera for Christmas when I was about 7, and I realized that I could film the stories that I was imagining and actually capture these things on film. And so that was the very seed of wanting to be a filmmaker.
Was there a particular film that influenced you, that you said, this is really what I want to be?
Yeah, it was King Kong, the original King Kong, which I saw when I was I was about 9 years old. I loved the escapism, I loved the adventure, and then at the end of the movie I cried when Kong fell off the Empire State Building. And so that kind of impact really did make me want to become a filmmaker at that point. I didn't want to do anything else ever.
And he didn't want to wait. At 9 years old, Peter Jackson was rounding up his friends, turning his backyard into a movie lot, and directing. By age 14, he was already experimenting with special effects, like stop-action animation.
As a filmmaker, was it an advantage developing your craft in New Zealand, or did you have disadvantages?
Well, I've really just been self-taught as a filmmaker. I never went to film school. In fact, in New Zealand, we never had a film school when I was young. And I grew up wanting to be a filmmaker in a country that didn't have a film industry either.
With no established career path to follow, no money, and still using friends for actors, Jackson set out to make his mark as quickly and cheaply as possible.
Human flesh is it.
Strategically, horror films are a good way to start your career. They're a genre which you can get a lot of impact with very little.
He released his first film, Bad Taste, about flesh-eating aliens, in 1987 when he was 26 years old. He baked the latex for the alien masks in his mother's oven.
You don't have access to very good actors. You usually don't have access to good scripts. But if you have an exuberant sort of imagination for like horror and splatter, then that gets people's attention.
A succession of low-budget splatter comedies followed: Meet the Feebles in 1989 and Brain Dead in 92. Then in 1994 came Heavenly Creatures.
Look, Mother.
Based on the true story of a sensational murder committed by 2 New Zealand schoolgirls. The film earned Peter Jackson and his companion Fran Walsh an Oscar nomination for Best Screenplay. They didn't win, but the mainstream recognition led to Jackson's first big-budget picture, The Frighteners, starring Michael J. Fox.
I would like some new clothes. You get to dress nice. Here I am still looking like Link from the Mod Squad.
You died in the 70s. It's a bummer.
Like all of Jackson's previous movies, The Frighteners went nowhere at the box office. But it was another stepping stone. For the film, Jackson had created a state-of-the-art computer system capable of special effects beyond any that had been seen before. That's when he had the big idea that would change his life.
I was just wondering, what can you do with these computers? What stories are now possible that have always been thought to be impossible to tell? And I always wanted to do a fantasy film. And of course, Lord of the Rings is the ultimate fantasy story.
Having a big idea is one thing. Selling it to Hollywood is another.
I mean, it was one of those classic stories where just about every studio turned us down. We came over to Los Angeles to meet with people, and there wasn't anybody that wanted to even meet with us.
Finally, New Line Cinema decided to take a chance on something that had never been done before, shelling out $300 million for Jackson to shoot all 3 films at once, one of the biggest gambles in Hollywood history.
We never even had a discussion with New Line about what would happen if the first film didn't work, but obviously New Line would have been in trouble, and it would have been seen as being one of the all-time cinematic train wrecks.
From the outset, the scope of the project was unprecedented. 15 months of shooting, a cast of thousands spread out across the North Island of New Zealand, as many as 9 different film crews shooting scenes from 3 different movies on any given day.
It was kind of like this big jigsaw puzzle with all the pieces flying at you at all times, and you had to kind of always stay on top of it, you know.
I couldn't work like that. I'm not clever enough, or confident enough.
Veteran actor Sir Ian McKellen, who plays the wizard Gandalf in the trilogy, was amazed at Jackson's skill and grace under fire.
And Peter was absolutely focused, but at the same time very relaxed. So, you know, very soon you liked the man so much that even if the movie'd end up being total rubbish, still it would have been enjoyable.
Which points to perhaps one of the most telling things about Peter Jackson.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about him, because
While happy to praise his skills as a director, it's Peter Jackson the man, the stars of the trilogy, including Sean Astin and Elijah Wood, are most eager to talk about.
I kind of regarded him as an uncle or a family member. Beyond being obviously an incredible visionary and an incredible director, he's just a very sort of shy, kind-hearted individual that's lovely to be around, you know.
There wasn't a moment where I sort of thought, look at the genius of this guy. It was actually when I was away from Peter that I'd have to say, wow, it's unbelievable what he's accomplishing. Because when you look at him, I sort of think of him as like a Willy Wonka kind of a guy. You know, he sort of goes through and he's kind of making this happen and making that happen and whatever. And it would be easy in his presence to miss it.
A Willy Wonka kind of guy who turned one of the biggest gambles in movie history into one of the biggest jackpots in movie history. And so the accolades pour in for the self-taught kid from Wellington, a Golden Globe for Best Director.
Peter Jackson for The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King.
A Directors Guild Award for Best Director.
He exemplifies modern master. It would have been foolish to consider anybody else this year.
And at the Santa Barbara Film Festival a few weeks ago, Jackson was honored with a Modern Master Award, which he accepted with typical humility.
And I don't feel like a modern master at all. I feel absolutely not masterish in the slightest. I'm just a kid, and I'm a kid who started to make films when I was 7 or 8 years old, and I still am.
Jackson is already hard at work on his next blockbuster. Appropriately enough, a $200 million remake of the film that started it all, King Kong.
If I can do it justice, if I can try to capture the things that I loved when I was 9 years old, then hopefully it'll continue to be inspirational.
So when the Oscars are handed out 2 weeks from today, rest assured, whether he wins one or not, Peter Jackson will be a happy man. Either way, he'll be back doing what it seems he was born to do, telling stories.
And cut. Okay, good. That's fine.
Robert Altman's new film is called Shortcuts. It's based on several short stories by the late Raymond Carver. Carver's stark, glossless look at American life is hardly the stuff Hollywood craves, which of course puts it right down Altman's alley.
Can you hear the helicopters? What are you wearing? Already? That was fast.
What you see in Shortcuts is fragments of stories about people, people that exist. It's a real total collaboration with Raymond Carver, I feel.
What are you doing here?
Just give me some coffee to move down.
Are you working around?
Yeah.
You got somebody in the car?
Yeah.
How come you got them here?
They're passed out.
Shortcuts is among the best pieces of work I've done, but no children can see it. It's 3 hours and 10 minutes long. No, it can only get so many plays in a theater, so it's not really as profitable for the exhibitors or for the distributors. It's got a tough row to hoe.
Lady, I work 16 hours a day to make ends meet. Yeah. I bake all night and work all day.
I thought you made phone calls at night.
I said, Ola, if I have one more beer, I'm gonna have to take a nap. And she says, I wondered what it would take to get you into bed.
Altman is without question among a handful of best American movie directors. Plenty of people would argue he is the best. And in that group, count the actors who take scale or less to appear in one of his films.
Alex Trebek? It is, I'm sure it is.
Who's Alex Trebek?
I have a great respect and awe for these people. I mean, you know, they stand up there, it's their bodies, it's their face, and if this thing is bad, it's them. And it's very courageous. Whatever drives them, I don't know. Whatever allows them to do it, I don't know. I can't do it.
It's interesting because they talk so highly about you. They say he's a genius.
Well, that's because I let them do what they want to do. I don't interfere with their artistry. I don't ever recall where I've ever had an actor on any film, or television, anything, where I've said, now here's what I want you to do. I say, here's the situation, here's the boundaries, what do you want to do?
Okay.
Show me. I want to see something I've never seen before.
I'll come with my cake. I'll see you.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, great. Yes,
oh, yeah. And you got one with Betty. All right, let's do it again.
By the time I've cast a film, the script is done, I know kind of what the film is going to be about. The casting's over, 80 to 90% of my work is finished. My creative work is finished.
So it's really the casting and
So
the
it's
concept.
yeah. So I have to come in the morning, turn the light switch on.
Okay. For 35 years, Robert Altman has been turning on the switch. The result has been numerous artistic triumphs from a man who went to Hollywood with one thing on his mind.
What made you want to make movies in the first place?
I think I wanted to get around all those pretty girls. I thought that looked like a kind of the right place to go.
There wasn't this artist with a vision that
No,
said,
no,
I have to go to Hollywood and make
No,
my films?
no, there was an artist with a, wasn't so much, it was an urge.
MASH put Robert Altman on the map. Critics loved it, so did audiences. The right movie, the right time.
The irreverent attitude of MASH, the sloppiness, if you will, of MASH, fit the times of what people wanted to see. And also, MASH, while it was supposed to be Korea, I did everything to hide that I could. Otherwise, this was Vietnam for me. It was Vietnam for all the actors that did it. Vietnam was happening. So we came out with something that the public was waiting for. And it splashed, and that was timing.
You got away with it.
Got away with it, yes. But the truth of the matter is that once these things are finished and cut loose and you cut the cord, they really are out there on their own, and I can't do anything about it. And there's no way to be right all the time. Then they talk about the great McCabe and Mrs. Miller. McCabe and Mrs. Miller has grossed less money than any film I've ever made.
John McCabe? Mrs. Miller.
So why does it surprise you then when people come up and say, this is this terrific movie, maybe one of the best of the last 25 years or so?
Doesn't surprise me. I mean, I think it is. I think they're right. But I say there's no commercial evidence so the two don't go hand in hand necessarily. And I'm sure many of these films I made that were never intended to be mass audience films.
Oh, my toil and teardrops make me sad.
Nashville was a film that I had total control over. I didn't have to answer to anybody for it. It cost less than $2 million to make Nashville. We weren't weighing ourselves against anybody, any system, or any other picture. We just did it. And again, it was the performers. I had those 24 actors down there. I had Lily Tomlin. I had, well, you know the cast. And we made it up as we went along.
You have been both loved and reviled in Hollywood. First, tell me what it's like to be loved there.
It's exactly the same as being reviled there. First place, there isn't anybody that you can name that's had a better shake than I've had. And I consider myself just going in a straight line.
People would disagree with that because they said that he disappeared.
Well, no, they disappeared. I was still there. So when we intersected, and that's good.
Put your face here.
Then the player came along. Somebody offered me the player, and I said, okay, I'll go do this.
What are you doing?
Finished the player, and of course the player looked very successful. We went to Cannes, and they tried to give me this picture, this picture. I said, no. I said, only one picture I'm going to do is Shortcuts. So finally they said, okay, go do Shortcuts.
The helicopters are here! Shut the windows!
Dog stays outside. I've told you 100 times.
So once again, Altman has made his movie under his terms. The timing for Shortcuts may be just right. Hollywood thinks Altman is hot again. It so happens some critics think Shortcuts is among his best.
One more question. How many clowns can you fit in this car, man?
Well, these are very good times, and I have, I have really high hopes and high anxiety about this film.
An animated film about a shy boy who marries a dead girl by mistake. It's the latest from director Tim Burton, using an old-fashioned process called stop-action animation. How does that work?
Well, I mean, they're puppets that are about this big, and they're literally, we build sets and light them, and the animators move the figure one frame at a time, 24 frames per second.
The movie is called Corpse Bride, and it's nominated for an Oscar tonight for Best Animated Feature. Johnny Depp is the voice of Victor, the groom.
I am terribly sorry about what's happened to you, and I'd like to help, but I really need to get home.
Tim's bottled something magical, you know? And I plan on drinking it.
Hit it, boys.
Corpse Bride is full of ghoulish glee, crumbling bones, and dead people stealing the show. A strange theme, perhaps, but not to those who know Tim Burton's work.
I've always been interested in the juxtaposition of what people say is fantasy versus reality, or what's normal versus abnormal. They always seem sort of different to me.
Smile, darling, smile.
It's a vision that's dark and oddly appealing, just as Tim Burton is when you sit down with him, as we did for a rare interview.
Well, I did have somebody say that their dog liked my work once, and I thought that was quite interesting.
It's weird because I was watching Corpse Bride this morning and my dog kept going up when that dog,
Really?
Scraps.
See, that's amazing. To me, those are the best compliments.
Yeah.
Because you know it's pure. Tell him thank you.
I
I'll
will.
send him a couple of bones after this one.
Tim Burton is a little strange.
Film critic Roger Ebert has been following Tim Burton's career ever since Burton made a very big splash 20 years ago as a young filmmaker.
If you go back through all of his pictures, you find nothing that is conventional. You find worlds that come completely out of his imagination, as in Big Fish or Pee-wee's Big Adventure, one of his earlier films. You find that his Batman pictures had a very distinctive look and feel to them.
And did we mention his movies make money? Batman is well up there on the list of Hollywood's top-grossing films.
Tim is visually astounding in the way he approaches material.
It's human nature to fear the unusual.
Danny DeVito plays the Penguin in Batman Returns. He's also the ringmaster in Burton's 2004 movie, Big Fish.
Even when you read the script of Big Fish, which is really terrific script, you don't really get the world that he's creating until you actually take that step with him, that first step into this world that is created in his mind.
DeVito even cast Burton in one of his own movies, Hoffa. That's Burton. Where else? In the Coffin.
He's amazing. He's like a god.
Fans love Burton's creative, quirky, fantastical world, along with his outsider take on life.
No one else has come up with the ideas that he has.
He has so much creativity. Never know how he even comes up with these things, but he is amazing.
He's just a great storyteller.
This is Tim Burton.
Among young adults who've grown up with his movies, Burton is a cult hero, with a kind of celebrity rare for a director. And what makes you like that? What makes you look at things this way? Was somebody horrible to you?
Besides all my teachers and parents and no.
In a way, Burton's drawings tell the story. By his own account, he was an odd and solitary kid growing up in Burbank, California, with little use for school or parents. He lived with his grandmother as a teenager and spent his days drawing and dreaming and watching old monster movies. You live near a cemetery?
Yeah.
Okay, is this...
Well, I
does
mean...
it play into all
No,
this
well, I mean, I
scary
did
stuff?
enjoy... Well, I mean, I did grow up watching monster movies and did enjoy playing... You know, I didn't feel any... But I thought most of the kids did. It didn't seem that strange to me.
Are you lashing back from being a tortured child?
Well, of course, you know. I mean, I think that's part of what's great about doing, you know, having whatever music or drawing or writing as an outlet. It's a good way to sort of exercise those things.
Burton's drawing talent won him a scholarship to nearby Cal Arts, founded by Walt and Roy Disney. And after that, a job as an animator, working on Disney classics like The Fox and the Hound.
My name's Todd. What's your name, kid?
He says he found the work tedious and dull. Disney let him make a short film of his own, Frankenweenie, about a little boy's efforts to revive his dead dog. Disney felt it was too scary to release, but its unique style opened doors. Next came Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which became a cult classic. And that led to...
It's showtime.
Beetlejuice, a sleeper hit, critical raves, and tons of money for Warner Brothers. Then came Burton's first really big budget movie, Batman. It was a smash. Suddenly, Tim Burton had Hollywood clout. The movie he chose to make next was Edward Scissorhands, probably Burton's most personal film, about a creative misfit in a world that oddly mirrors the one Burton grew up in. A small film, but one that almost didn't get made, despite that newly acquired Hollywood clout.
What they like about you, they fear about you. You know, they think you're somewhat of a strange person, so they're always a little bit worried about what you want to do, even if it seems to do okay.
I'm thinking, I'm giving control to this guy?
Exactly. You know.
He doesn't even brush his hair.
Yeah. So how is he going to do a movie?
Well,
exactly.
I think you
I think you You've been listening to some of those conversations.
To play Edward Scissorhands, Burton chose Johnny Depp, who's now shooting Disney's sequel to Pirates of the Caribbean in the Bahamas. We asked him to send along his thoughts.
We connected on a number of levels. You know, there was a kind of the beginning of that sort of interesting shorthand that exists between Tim and I.
He's just somebody that likes to transform, and he's more like an old-fashioned, like Boris Karloff or Lon Chaney style actor than he is like a leading man. And so I enjoy that, people like that. You know, they're always surprising. In fact, with those kind of people, you have to fight them to not cover themselves up too completely, because you know their instinct is to become something completely different.
You're really weird.
Depp and Burton have gone on to make many movies together, including Ed Wood.
All right, everybody, let's get set up for scene 112.
Burton's loving tribute to the man considered by many Hollywood insiders to be the worst director of all time.
He deserves to be loved. Ed Wood, there's a kind of purity to Ed Wood that I would say is in terms of intent, is not dissimilar from Tim.
I definitely identified with him. I mean, I grew up seeing his movies and seeing how special they were. And, you know, just being in the industry, you know that there's a real fine line between what can be a failure and a success and what makes an artist or not.
Ed Wood may or may not have been a cinematic genius, but he was a character. His movie, Plan 9 from Outer Space, featured a very old Bela Lugosi who died while it was being made. Wood got his dentist to fill in.
The reason he wanted to make Ed Wood, and Ed Wood made the worst films ever made, was because Ed Wood had so much fun making those films and threw himself into them with such abandon. And that's where Ed Wood and Tim Burton connect. Tim Burton makes films that are a lot better, but he doesn't make them with any more love.
Tim Burton's real life these days seems almost, dare we say it, normal. He lives in England with actress Helena Bonham Carter and their young son, Billy. The two often work together. She played a witch in Big Fish, Charlie Bucket's mother in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and she's the voice of the Corpse Bride.
It's quite nice. She knows what it's all about, and so there's no ego, no problem whatsoever. So it's actually pretty easy.
And your life now, you could argue, has sort of a fairy tale aspect to it.
I mean, happily ever after?
You're happy, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. Now I'm going to turn into a frog and jump off stage now.
Tonight, he may find himself jumping onto a stage at the Oscars.
Well, because he's overdue. Because he deserves it.
You gonna go?
Yeah, if I can. I'm having my white leisure suit cleaned at the moment. If the stains come through, I'll be okay, yeah.
It's not every day a horse walks the red carpet with a film's director. But last Sunday, Steven Spielberg shared the limelight at the UK premiere of War Horse. Not to be upstaged even by royalty. War Horse is about Joey, a farm horse sold to the British Army in 1914 at the beginning of World War I.
He won't be any good in the war neither. He shies at every sound.
I'm sorry.
And it's about Albert, the boy who loves him so much he sets out to find him at the battlefront.
Why did you want to make this?
Because I just loved Joey so much, and I loved his relationship with Albert, and I just hated to see them separated, and I couldn't wait to see how they would ever come together again, and that really pulled me.
Action! Action on the horses!
Long before a single scene of Spielberg's film was shot, War Horse was a novel for young adults published in 1982. Michael Morpurgo intended it as an anti-war statement. He was inspired by conversations at his local pub in the picturesque English village of Iddesleigh in Devon with an elderly World War I veteran named Albert. Albert Weeks.
So I said, well, how old were you? He said, I was 17. I was there with horses. And he started talking.
And the more he talked, the more upset he became. This young man who'd come away from a completely pastoral background and had been thrust into this hideous, hideous trench warfare. The only thing I think that kept him sane was that he said that he would talk to his horse.
10 million men died in World War I, and it's believed about the same number of horses.
So what I had to do is to start out with an idea which would be acceptable to the sensitivities of young people, which is why it's told through the eyes of a horse, because the child can access that much more readily.
In other words, Joey telling his own story. Now, fast forward nearly 3 decades.
I'm volunteering.
War Horse, the play, is a theatrical phenomenon.
Get ready to jump the wire!
The National Theatre of Great Britain's most successful production ever.
Only remembered.
Last year, it opened at Lincoln Center in New York City and won 5 Tony Awards.
Going full, boy, go on!
The story is told by larger-than-life puppets. Horses so extraordinary, you forget they're not real. For the stage adaptation, details from the book had to be changed.
When I first saw the play, I kept saying, well, where's that? And how can that work if that isn't there? Picky, picky, picky. But then when I'd seen it once or twice, and I was able to sit back and relax and look at it as not as a dramatization of my story. It's like handing a baby over, you know?
Michael Morpurgo has actually gotten to be in it as a bidder when Joey is auctioned off as a colt. So he no longer minds that scenes and characters were left out or even added, like this goose.
I don't know, the goose made me laugh. Goose came out, it was welcome relief, I needed to laugh.
So the goose made it into Steven Spielberg's movie.
I had a few tears in my eyes in the first act. I needed that goose to dry my eyes, and I needed something to divert my attention from what I knew was inevitably coming down the road against this family and against Joey and Albert being together.
In the film, the horses are real. 14 different horses played Joey. From book to play to movie, one story, 3 radically different takes. What can you do and what can't you do in a movie when you're trying to translate something that has been the book and been the play?
Well, you can pretty much do anything because, you know, in terms of the book and the play, it's different, and you have to basically devote all of your energy and all of your passion to the medium at hand. And so there was a point where I had to forget the book and I had to forget the play, and I just had to make my version of War Horse.
Central to all 3 versions, the end of an era in warfare. The fact that World War I was when tanks replaced war horses. In the play, a moment symbolized by this terrible confrontation. Here it is in the film. In all 3 tellings, Joey's run ends in the hellish desolation of no man's land. He's trapped in the tangle of barbed wire separating the Germans and the British. They stop fighting when they see him.
Action!
I see it as a story about, you know, the connections that an animal can make, that perhaps only an animal can make in bringing people together and bringing everybody on the same side of an issue, even an issue as large as the Great War, the First World War.
We'll tell a story.
And now a postscript. Michael Morpurgo's novel begins in the old school they use now for the village hall, below the clock that has stood always at 10:01, hangs a small, dusty painting of a horse. Joey. Tourists flock to see it, but of course it didn't exist.
They go to the lady who's a dear friend of mine who lives next door to the village hall, and they knock on their door and they say, we want to see the picture. And she said, well, it's gone to be cleaned, or it's not that it's in a museum, and all sorts of fibs she was telling.
While on location with Spielberg, Morpurgo and his wife commissioned an artist working on the film to paint one. So now, in the village hall, There really is a painting of Joey, a fictional horse with truth to tell.
Only remembered for what we have done.
This is quite the scene here.
It is the scene.
What's going to happen when Greta Gerwig walks in?
Nothing. Nothing will happen.
In her hometown of Sacramento, Greta Gerwig doesn't yet get mobbed in public.
Can I have an infinite latte?
Greta.
Can you spell that for me?
Greta. This is almost like Central Perk from Friends.
Until this year, the 34-year-old was probably best known as an actor.
Did you do that?
No, that's my niece.
With roles opposite Ben Stiller.
She's 4.
Annette Bening.
Hey, and do we really need to know everything that's going on with you?
What? I'm menstruating. Why is that a big deal?
And Natalie Portman.
But the cameras, those pictures are being broadcast to every corner of the world.
Those pictures should record the truth.
But now she's written and directed Lady Bird, starring Saoirse Ronan, a movie praised as perfect by some critics and celebrated as the best reviewed movie of all time on the sometimes surly film website Rotten Tomatoes.
I like your band with Jonah Ruiz, Len Fansnew.
Not Fansnew.
My name's Lady Bird.
It's weird you shake hands.
Yeah.
I don't typically read reviews while it's going on.
You must be aware.
I'm aware. I'm definitely aware.
That people are using some pretty dramatic language.
I'm very aware.
You should just go to City College. You know, with your work ethic, just go to City College and then to jail and then back to City College and then maybe you'd learn to pull yourself up and not expect everybody to do everything.
Ronan plays an artsy Sacramento teenager, much as Gerwig once was.
You remembered.
You're my only daughter.
But don't mistake Lady Bird for an autobiography.
Why do you think it bothers you when people assume that it is?
Because I spent so long writing it, and I worked so hard on the script to get it just right, and I don't like the implication that it's not an act of imagination, because it is 100% an act of imagination.
You could say Gerwig's first role was as a pint-sized director.
When I was 5 years old, I tried to organize everybody in my kindergarten to do a production of Starlight Express.
With support from her parents, she went on to pursue ballet, theater, and playwriting. But when it came to college, well...
I've been rejected from every formal training program I've ever applied to. I remember at the UCLA audition, they didn't even look at me. And I thought, that can't be a good sign. They don't let people in that they don't look at.
Gerwig found her way to New York City's Barnard College instead, and into a hazy, improvisational film movement known as mumblecore.
Like you're saying things that he said, like
No, I really came to these thoughts on my own. It's not just because Paul said them to me.
These days, she bristles at the very word.
I hate the word. I hate the word mumblecore.
Didn't feel like a compliment to be
Did
the
not
Meryl
feel
Streep
like
of mumblecore?
No, it felt not like a compliment. But
and yet,
what was wonderful about it was it allowed me to understand how films are built, because we were doing everything, everybody was doing everything.
You held the boom.
Yeah, of course, I held the boom.
You're tall.
I'm so tall. I've got really long arms and I'm sturdy.
For years, Gerwig focused on acting, but used her time to study the work of her directors. Among them Woody Allen, Rebecca Miller, and her now fiance, Noah Baumbach.
And he said, do you have any ideas? And it was one of those like, funny you should ask moments. And it was like, here's my tome.
Together, they wrote 2 movies with starring roles for Gerwig. But Lady Bird is the first film she's written and directed alone.
Was it widely known that you were working on this in the film industry?
No. I tried to keep it kind of, not under wraps, but I feel like movies are delicate and I don't like to talk about them too much until I'm actually making it. I guess I'm self-conscious about saying like, I got a movie I'm working on that I'm gonna direct. But then when we come to this, where she's here and here.
Gerwig's silence was also a kind of strategy.
I realized pretty young that being quite ambitious was considered unattractive in a girl. And I remember when I was around 7th grade, 8th grade, it clicked in. And I remember consciously thinking, oh, people don't like this.
So is that sad, that memory? Or that realization?
It is now. At the time, it felt like survivalism. And I remember I had an acting teacher who was watching me when I was in college, and he was like, you're doing something, but you have a trick, and I will figure it out. And he finally said, I got it. I know what you're doing. You're pretending to be vulnerable, but it's hiding your total ambition. And I was like, oh my God, he's right.
On a recent morning, Gerwig's ambition was to show us around her old neighborhood in Sacramento.
Do you feel like you were unfair to the town as a kid?
Definitely. I also feel like perhaps I should move back.
Really?
And in Lady Bird, Gerwig hoped to capture her hometown's underappreciated beauty.
Collapse like a little closer.
And tell a classic coming-of-age story from a perhaps not-so-classic perspective.
Follow Serge. Lucas, get up. Follow her.
Why didn't you just say pick up your feet?
I didn't know if you were tired.
You were being passive-aggressive.
No, I
You are
wasn't.
so infuriating.
Please stop yelling.
I'm not yelling.
There are great movies about women, and there's great movies about mothers and daughters, but there's not as many as there are about men. That's just statistically true.
I love it.
And here's another statistic.
Is it too pink?
In 89 years, only one woman, Kathryn Bigelow, has won an Oscar for Best Director.
What pisses me off any given year is that I can think of 5 films directed by a woman that deserve to be there, that deserve to be talked about like that. Every year I can tell you the women where I'm like, why aren't they there?
No matter what happens on Oscar night this year, Gerwig plans to direct again.
It's the best feeling in the world. It's the best. It's my favorite, hands down.
But she still likes to keep her work a secret, even now that her ambition is no secret anymore.
I guess all that's over.
Yeah, all that's over.
You're never going to surprise someone again.
No, I can kind of just, I can be the maniac I am openly.
There's a simple lesson in life that you have to learn, and you can do everything I do, and it's just to say yes much more than you say no. Would you like to go for a walk?
Yes.
You've learned.
As philosophies of life go, it's one that served Francis Ford Coppola well. The land, as far as he can see, is his. He's got 2 wineries, 3 luxury resorts, restaurants, and a line of food products. At 68 years old, he's rich enough, so he didn't have to direct another movie ever. But it's because he is rich enough that he decided he could.
Salute.
He put up the money to make Youth Without Youth himself. Not more than $17 million is all he'll say.
It made me feel very empowered that I didn't need to go to the new studio heads, whoever they may be, to ask their permission. Okay, let's go. Here we go. Action.
They probably would have said no to the film, starring the British actor Tim Roth. Based on a novella by a Romanian theologian, it's about an elderly university professor who is struck by lightning. Instead of dying, he miraculously becomes young again.
You have become the most valuable human specimen existing today on the face of the earth.
Francis Coppola sees parallels with his own life.
It was a story of a man, not different in age than I was, who got a new opportunity to live life and to fall in love one last time.
We should go to somewhere beautiful on a Mediterranean island.
Dominic, that would make me very, very happy.
After not doing movies in a number of years, why this movie? Why now?
I became, at a very young age, in my 20s, really a kind of important Hollywood studio type director. And ironically, I never got to do that first career that I had wanted to do as a teenager, which was the personal filmmaker.
So he's doing it now. Youth Without Youth premiered at the Rome Film Festival this fall and opens in the United States later this month. It's the first movie Coppola's directed in nearly 10 years. What was he doing all that time other than making money?
I still was working on writing big projects because I had become known for big operatic projects, and I thought, well, maybe this was the time to do a really big, ambitious film.
Called Megalopolis, it was set lavishly in New York. Coppola struggled to make the film work, but couldn't. 9/11 finished it off. Shattered when he decided to make Youth Without Youth, he kept it a secret.
I really felt the need to protect that, may I say, vulnerable part of me who had been bruised over 10 years of not being able to get to make the film I had been trying to make. And you know, I was embarrassed by that failure. I was frustrated by that failure, and having just this little secret just gave me a lot of courage and self-satisfaction.
These are pretty complicated themes, Francis.
Francis Coppola's wife Eleanor documented the production in her film, Coda, 30 years later.
You play it, Adrian, as if she were your daughter and she has come home.
I was witnessing my husband going through a profound creative process.
Okay, let's try. Your whole life's in front of you, twice. I became very, very enthusiastic. This is it. I think this is fine. Very much like a young man, and ironically, that is something that the film dealt with. So in the best of all cases, when you make a film, the film is in fact something you're really going through personally at that time. You know, when I made The Godfather, people said, oh, he's a guy like Michael Corleone. Or when I made Apocalypse Now, they said, well, he's totally a megalomaniac like Kurtz.
Which means his life has been a wild ride. Francis Ford Coppola is from a family of noted musicians. He had polio as a kid, moved around a lot, went to different schools, even a military academy for a time. He says he was lonely, so he made little movies featuring relatives like his Uncle Clarence. He knew by the time he was a teenager that he wanted to be a filmmaker for real. He was in his mid-20s, just out of film school, when he wrote the screenplay for Patton. It won him his first of 5 Oscars in 1970. Coppola, along with George Lucas and other friends, moved to San Francisco and started a production company, which quickly found itself broke.
Then even my young associate, George Lucas, said, Francis, we have to make some money.
The Godfather was an offer he couldn't refuse.
Although I was not so sure to do it or want to do it, I did do it, and ultimately it changed my life.
Michael Francis Rizzi, do you renounce Satan?
But Coppola battled non-stop with the film's producers to make the movie his way.
I do renounce it.
One of the biggest box office hits of all time, its success made The Conversation possible.
You'd kill us if you got the chance.
The Conversation received Oscar nominations for Best Picture and Best Screenplay in 1975. But that same year, Coppola, competing against himself, won for Godfather 2, Best Picture, Best Screenplay, and Best Director.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
And then came Apocalypse Now. Throughout Francis Coppola's career, money has either been the villain or, as it's turned out, the hero in every drama he's produced, on or off camera. Eleanor Coppola's documentary, Hearts of Darkness, chronicles a disaster in the making.
Apocalypse Now has been budgeted at $13 million. In order to maintain creative control, Francis had to raise the money himself. If the film goes over budget, Francis is responsible.
Trying to pull off scenes like this one, plus star Martin Sheen's heart attack and a typhoon, meant delays and debt.
It was $35 million I was on the hook for.
But when you have that stake in something and you come so close to absolute ruin.
Well, it's very traumatic to the family, and of course, you know, I have to say that during Apocalypse Now, I was just terrified. I was scared, you know, is the only word I can use.
But it got worse. When his romantic musical, One from the Heart, bombed, Coppola actually began bankruptcy proceedings. For the next dozen years, he worked for the money, directing other people's movies as well as his own. Anybody else would have played it safe, not Francis Coppola. In better times, he had bought the old Inglenook winery in the Napa Valley as a summer home. He borrowed $40,000 from his mother and went into the wine business.
I mean, I could see that this was a billion-dollar empire, and $1 billion is 10, 100 millions.
The wineries.
I could see that was the insurance policy to end all insurance policy as far as an aspiring young art film director.
And what you've built now is literally $1 billion family business.
Oh, in excess.
Wow. Huh. Did you ever conceive of that when you went to film school?
No.
I
didn't conceive of it when I was paying off the debts on One from the Heart.
The pain is still there, and the bitterness. Even now, when Coppola films appear on just about everybody's top 100 lists.
I feel, where were you when I needed you, basically? I remember once I threw all the Oscars out the window of the house because it was so frustrating that I was getting all this negative press and negative reaction, and I said, what do I have to do to get a little kind of support? Of course, my mother picked up all the broken Oscars and went to the Academy and said, oh, my son's maid was dusting the Oscars and they fell off the shelf and they all were broken. And they looked at them and they're all like in the gravel split, and stuff. So she got me my Oscars back.
Coppola named food products after his mother and wine after his daughter Sophia, an Oscar winner in her own right. Her relatively low-budget, self-financed movies were what inspired him to return to personal filmmaking, to turn his back on big studio productions.
Believe it or not, I have been offered those kinds of projects still every once in a while with fabulous, important actors of the day and big, ambitious subject matter.
But you've turned them down?
Well, because I say now at this age, I just want to do things I'm just personally obsessed to do. It's like being in love. I want to be in love with who I want to be in love with.
But in movie making, as in love, there's risk. No one knows that better than Francis Ford Coppola. But after all these years, he's still saying yes.
Let's shoot it. Life is short, and you don't want to be an old guy counting his last heartbeat, thinking about all the things you wanted to do that you didn't do because you were scared. What's to be scared of in life?
Hey, have a lot of fun.
In the end, it all ends the same.
Here are the nominees for Achievement in Directing. BlacKkKlansman, Spike Lee. BlacKkKlansman.
BlacKkKlansman.
Adam Driver in BlacKkKlansman.
Imagine Spike Lee's pleasure last month when he and his latest film, BlacKkKlansman, got 6 Oscar nominations,
BlacKkKlansman,
including for Best Picture. Actually, you don't have to imagine it.
So we all got up early to watch it. My son Jackson, we didn't even know he was doing it, videotaped on his iPhone. Now what you see was everybody jumping down for Best Picture.
And we're all
jumping down.
After 40 years of directing nearly a film a year, this is Spike's first nomination for Best Director and Best Film. It's a sore point going back 30 years when his widely praised film, Do the Right Thing, that he directed and acted in as Mookie the Pizza Delivery Man, was overlooked for Best Picture.
Always do the right thing.
That's it?
That's it.
I got it. I'm gone.
A lot of people said you were robbed. Did it hurt?
Oh, it hurt. And the reason why it hurt, if they chose a great film for Best Picture, I've been cool with it. But their choice?
Driving Miss Daisy.
Yeah, that one.
That hurt. Up against yours.
Hurt like a
Hurt like a beep beep.
It did. After Do the Right Thing, and it was solidified with Malcolm X, I was never going to be put in a position myself where I needed someone's, whatever it is, to validate my work, like to give it value. I mean, I know what I do, and the people let me know. People tell me I've changed their life, how they never thought about going to college before they saw School Days. How they never even thought how that black people can make movies.
Isn't it ironic, I think it is, that now that BlacKklansman has been nominated, you're up against the Green Book, which is, you know, kind of a reverse Driving Miss Daisy, a white man driving a black man.
Well,
there you go. Isn't that funny or strange?
I had to talk to my wife, and we're not speaking about no other films, particularly that one.
If it wins, you're not going to say a word?
Well, I didn't say that. Let's not take it too far.
If you haven't seen BlacKklansman, here's the short version.
6 words. Black man infiltrates Ku Klux Klan. That was it. That was it.
That was it.
That was it. The greatest ever. 6 words.
But it happened. You didn't make that up.
A black cop, Ron Stallworth, really did infiltrate the Klan.
Sorry, who am I talking to?
This is Ron Stallworth calling from Colorado Springs, Colorado. How are you today, sir?
In the film, Ron, played by John David Washington, Denzel's son, gets on the phone with David Duke, the Klan's Grand Wizard, played by Topher Grace.
I'm just happy to be talking to a true white American.
Hey, man. It seems like there's less and less of us out there these days.
In 1978, Stallworth, a Colorado Springs detective, began an undercover investigation into the Klan and later wrote the book that inspired the movie.
How on earth did you get away with this?
With a little bit of luck, with a lot of skill, and with the participants that we were investigating being as dumb as they come.
The members of the Ku Klux Klan.
That's correct.
Gullible.
Dumb and Dumber?
Dumb and Dumber and Dumbest, yes.
To persuade the Klan of your authenticity, you said some vile things over the phone.
I used their language, the language of hate.
Yeah, like what?
When they asked me why I wanted to join, I said I hate pigs, chinks, Jews, Japs, and anybody else that isn't pure Aryan white like I am. Like we are.
In the movie, as in real life, Ron answered a Klan recruiting ad. When he was invited to join, there had to be 2 Rons. Black Ron on the phone.
They want to meet you. Yeah, well, you probably shouldn't go to that meeting.
Good call, Sarge.
And White Ron, played by Oscar nominee Adam Driver, who would go to Klan gatherings.
Mr. Duke, I would like you to meet our newest recruit, Ron Stallworth.
Ron Stallworth, it is a pleasure to finally meet you in person.
Same, you as well.
The real Ron showed us his Klan membership card that he keeps in his wallet.
It's signed by Duke.
That's how he signs it. Yeah, just Duke.
Just Duke.
Last summer, when the movie came out, Ron got a surprising phone call from someone he hadn't talked to in 40 years, Duke himself.
And he had issues with how he was being portrayed, and he wanted to discuss that with me. I guess he thought I was going to go to Spike and appeal to Spike to tone it down a little bit. That's the only thing I can think of. But
unbelievable.
That's why he called.
Ron's wife, Patsy, recorded the call on her phone.
Ready? Yep.
You know, I don't have the same recollection that you do on some of the terms because I've always prided myself. In fact, all my Klan people always talked about how that I don't use the N-word. But I'm not saying I've never used it in context, obviously.
Spike was called the N-word many times when his family became the first blacks to move into Cobble Hill, then an Italian-American neighborhood in Brooklyn.
Did you have any other acts of racism against you?
Yeah, I wanted to join the Boy Scouts. and they said I couldn't do it because I wasn't Catholic. Yeah, well, we all knew what it was. My
course.
father told me
Well, of course.
what it was. So after that, I said, F the Boy Scouts. I don't want to be in them.
His father, a jazz musician who wrote the scores for most of Spike's early films, taught him another lesson.
You have a policy against drugs. Have you ever even had a joint yourself?
It's well publicized. My father had an addiction.
Oh,
So-
I actually did not know that.
So just seeing that, he was a jazz musician, that era. That era, jazz musicians, you know, they were doing stuff. And so
His mother, who died when he was away at Morehouse College, was an English teacher.
my freshman year, I was very lonely. I was homesick. And I write my mother every week. And every week my mother would turn those letters that I wrote, and it looked like she had cut her wrist on the paper. It was all marked up in red. And she was telling me, I can't believe I have a son that goes to Morehouse that's semi-literate.
The semi-literate, now 61 years old, and just nominated for writing the BlacKklansman screenplay, bought this building in Brooklyn 25 years ago from all the money he'd already made on his movies. It's the headquarters of his production company called 40 Acres and a Mule. It's where he cuts most of his movies with his editor, Barry Brown.
It's a shot that Spike has used a lot, very effectively.
Spike, when's the first movie that you use this?
Mo Better Blues.
It's where Spike keeps all the stuff he's collected over the years, including shots of him spouting off at Knicks games in a way that's earned him his reputation as an angry black man.
They don't know what I was yelling, so.
Do you know how I get up for my game? Do you know? Do you know? Do you know?
And there were reminders of his career as a maker of and actor in his famous ads for Nike Air Jordans.
Oh, money, why you want to do that to me? Why you leave me hanging?
There's just one thing missing in all the clutter in his office: an Oscar for Best Film.
Films are dreams in a way. They're made up of all your hopes and your joys and your fears and a combination of those things. I think they're very personal. They are to me anyway.
In the Hollywood Dream Factory, Norman Jewison is a master craftsman.
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
The Russians are coming! The Russians are coming!
I'm in love with you.
Snap out of it!
His dreams, some 25 films over more than 40 years, range from comedies to dramas to musicals.
All these right here.
Yeah.
These like your kids, I guess. Is there
These
any
are-
one you could look at and say, I like this one more than the others?
Probably the one I'm going to make tomorrow. I don't know.
You did.
At 79, Jewison still looks forward to his next movie, but he also looks back at a lifetime of work in his new autobiography, This Terrible Business Has Been Good to Me.
Why is it a terrible business?
It's full of disappointment, rejection, double dealing.
Before you went into it, did you know it was going to be so tough? Did you have any idea how tough it was going to be?
No. I think when you start, you're so excited just to be doing a show. We're putting on a show.
Jewison began putting on shows as a child growing up in Toronto. He then dabbled in show business as an actor and writer. He began directing in the then new medium of television at the CBC, then here at CBS, doing programs like Your Hit Parade. In the early 60s, Hollywood came calling.
Hi, Jew. George!
He started in studio comedies like the Doris Day Rock Hudson vehicle, Send Me No Flowers.
The Russians have landed.
But he first made his mark with the 1966 The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming, a Cold War comedy about a Russian submarine that accidentally runs aground off Cape Cod.
For God's sake, why is it we can't learn to live together? You're right, Norman.
I wanted to make a film about fear and paranoia and about the absurdity of international conflict. I think it was the Hollywood Reporter called me a Canadian pinko.
Jewison always wore his liberal politics on his sleeve. As a young man, he toured the American South in his Canadian sailor's uniform and got kicked off a bus for sitting near an open window in the back.
And the bus driver looked at me in the mirror and said, "You trying to be funny, sailor?" And I looked up, and here was a sign about this big on a piece of tin. And it had been hand-lettered, and it said, "Colored people to the rear of the bus," right? To the rear.
It was an experience, he said, that profoundly affected him.
And I think maybe that had something to do with some of the shows and films and things I've tried to make.
Yeah.
Because I do believe that America is one of the freest countries in the world for the individual rights of the citizen. It's also a country founded in racism. And you got to talk about that. Yeah. And you got to deal with it.
Jewison did deal with it, beginning in 1967 with In the Heat of the Night, starring Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger.
Just what you do up there in little old Pennsylvania, earn that kind of money?
I'm a police officer.
What's your favorite scene from In the Heat of the Night?
I think it's the slap scene when the white head honcho feels that Sidney is accusing him of being involved in the murder of this businessman from Chicago.
Gillespie? Yeah. You saw it. I saw it. Well, what are you gonna do about it? I don't know.
In the Heat of the Night went on to win 6 Oscars, including Best Picture, but not Best Director. Jewison would be nominated again 4 years later.
The studio thought you were Jewish, correct, when they asked you to make
Who doesn't think I'm Jewish? I mean, come on.
Norman Jewison.
Yeah.
You thought you were Jewish.
I thought I was Jewish, right. Because they called me Jew boy and Jewy all my life when I was a kid.
Let's go. Let's not have any inquest. Let's just do it again.
I worked hard in that picture.
Action.
People who pass through Anatevka.
I think it's lasted through the years. I think it's better now than it was when I made it.
What do we leave? Nothing much.
Look!
Only Anatevka.
You get space between Molly and her.
There's something about Fiddler on the Roof that reveals to the rest of the world part of the essence of Jewish culture, I think.
Speaking of musicals, why did you decide to make Jesus Christ Superstar?
I did one for the Goyim.
Jesus Christ Superstar.
I saw Jesus Christ Superstar as a perfect rock opera about the good, the bad, and the beautiful. It was the first rock video.
Jewison made the musicals while living in Europe, but in 1976, he returned to his native Canada.
This is where I fill my cup.
On his farm, an hour outside Toronto, where he raises cattle.
I shovel the real stuff up here. So when my agent calls and the studios call, I say, just tell him he's in the barn.
Or in his sugar shack, where in the early spring, he makes maple syrup.
This is like a cathedral down here with all these wonderful sugar maples.
Is this something you've always been interested in, or is this something you can't really?
It's a very Canadian thing, man.
He's something of a favorite son in Canada. He founded the Canadian Film Centre in 1988, and he's chancellor at Victoria University at the University of Toronto. Still, Jewison remains drawn to stories about America. He returned to the topic of race relations with the 1984 movie A Soldier's Story, about a platoon of black soldiers in World War II.
You can throw a pretty mean punch, boy. But old Sarge is here to kick your ass.
I've been locked up for 30 years.
and 1999's The Hurricane, the story of Reuben Hurricane Carter.
I think where he sees injustice, he tries to right it.
Denzel Washington starred in both A Soldier's Story and The Hurricane.
He's very interested in what the actor is doing and how he's doing it. And he's very affected by it. I mean, there were scenes we did in A Hurricane, and he was in worse emotional shape than I was, and I'm supposed to be the one in bad shape. We cut, and I'm like, are you okay? But he's honest like that.
I put a lot of good people's lives at risk.
Well received initially, The Hurricane was engulfed in controversy when questions were raised over its historical accuracy. Jewison thought it cost Washington an Oscar.
I think his performance in Hurricane is the best performance by an actor in any film I've made.
Do you play?
Try me.
Always considered an actor's director, Jewison worked with some of the biggest stars in Hollywood, like Steve McQueen in the original Thomas Crown Affair and The Cincinnati Kid.
He said to me, he said, "You're twisting my melon, man." He was so hip, I never knew what he was saying. I never understood him.
Something really wrong is going on.
And Al Pacino in And Justice for All.
You're out of order. The whole trial is out of order. They're out of order.
Pacino was one of a dozen actors to get Oscar nominations for their work in Jewison films, along with Anne Bancroft and Meg Tilly for Agnes of God, and Olympia Dukakis and Cher for Moonstruck.
Do you love him, Loretta?
No.
Good. When you love them, they drive you crazy, because they know they can.
Dearest Norman, you were right.
Yeah, because she didn't think that Moonstruck was going to be an important picture and didn't know why she was in it. You know, it was one of those things. She was very worried about playing Loretta Castorini. And I told her that if she didn't do the film, she would regret it for the rest of her life. And she believed me, and she did it. And
she won a little Oscar for that, if I recall.
She won an Oscar, yeah, and she thanked her hairdresser and her makeup person.
All told, Jewison's films received 46 Oscar nominations, winning 12. But it wasn't until 1999 that the director himself got to take the stage, when the Academy recognized his body of work with the prestigious Irving Thalberg Award.
First person I saw was the conductor, and he was playing If I Were a Rich Man.
He offered this advice to young filmmakers.
Just tell stories that move us to laughter and tears and perhaps reveal a little truth about ourselves.
If I were a wealthy...
The kind of stories Norman Jewison has been telling for more than 40 years.
So how do you know you're watching a Nancy Meyers movie?
Janie, come on. He cheats on you with her. Your 20-year marriage ends.
And then he marries her? Perhaps your first clue is the snappy dialogue, where the women get all the best lines.
Joe, you are so lucky Jerry is dead.
Thank you.
You don't have to bump into him.
Oh, that's true.
Yes, I do like giving the woman the joke. I absolutely do.
So it's a conscious choice?
Yeah, it's her movie. Yeah, it's always the woman's movie in my mind.
Or maybe you know it's Meyers because the stars, like Meryl Streep and Alec Baldwin, are over 50, 60 even, and they're doing love scenes.
I thought it was smoking hot.
Oh, God.
Who are your movies for?
Hopefully everybody. Hopefully everybody. But I know that there is a certain segment of the population which they like to call the older demographic, which is anybody over 30, I think, is the older demographic.
That's so sad.
It's sad. How do you think I feel?
The 60-year-old writer-director has found new life in the older demographic with a string of hits like What Women Want, Something's Gotta Give, and now It's Complicated.
You look good, Janie.
Yeah.
You do. You always do. Your hair's shorter.
Longer.
I like it.
So there's this pivotal bar scene in the movie. Without giving too much away, can we talk about it?
Sure.
Streep and Baldwin play a divorced couple who find each other alone in a hotel bar.
And so the two of them have a drink together, which leads to a bottle of wine together, which leads to dinner together. And then the one thing I think she could never imagine herself doing, she does.
I'm having an affair with a married man.
You're not saying.
Oh, yes, I am. Turns out I'm a bit of a slut.
The story came from, in part, my own life, in that Meryl and I are actually the exact same age. I'm divorced. My ex-husband is remarried.
Can we just hug?
Oh, God. Okay. No, see? Too much.
Okay, good note.
While the scenarios are pure fiction, Nancy Meyers' characters are almost always based in part on her life. It's the old adage, write what you know, but it works.
There has to be a little piece of Nancy Meyers in...
Well, there has to be a piece of what I think is some truth to it, you know?
That's nice.
Right, so I don't have a huge imagination is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Truth is, Meyers' imagination was sparked early. Growing up in Philadelphia, she spent hours watching classic movies and moved to LA to try to write them. When she couldn't sell scripts, she sold cheesecakes instead.
Do you share the recipe?
No, I haven't. I haven't shared the recipe because, you know, I may need something to fall back on.
Her big break came when she teamed up with her boyfriend, Charles Shire, on a screenplay about a young woman from Philadelphia striking out on her own, Private Benjamin.
Excuse me, sir, is green the only color these come in?
Screenplay was rejected at first?
Everybody rejected it, yeah. Believe it or not everybody wanted to make a movie about a woman who punches out the groom at the altar at the end and walks off on her own and throws her veil in the air, and especially not Goldie Hawn. She wasn't Jane Fonda, you know, she was Goldie. She was the girl in the bikini.
People love me!
The studios were wrong. Private Benjamin was one of the biggest box office hits of 1980. 4 years later, Meyers and Shire wrote another winner, Irreconcilable Differences.
You both treat me like chattel. You cannot do with me as you please anymore. We have irreconcilable differences.
It was really about how success can kill a couple.
You are a repulsive human being. You are the reason women hate men.
We made a movie about that subject, I think in hopes that we would be safe.
And for 2 decades, they weren't only safe, they were on top of the world. When Nancy was pregnant, they wrote Baby Boom, a movie ahead of its time in tackling how women balance work and family.
Your baby has just barfed all over my bar.
This is not my baby. I went to Harvard and Yale, and I don't have children.
And as parents of 2 young daughters, they penned the mega-hit remake of Father of the Bride.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Dad, I met a man in Rome, and he's wonderful and brilliant, and we're getting married.
Mom, what's he doing?
In fact, Nancy Meyers and Charles Shire's success led to a Hollywood nickname.
The Schmeyers.
The Schmeyers.
Yeah.
They were the behind-the-scenes version of Brangelina. But it wasn't until their older daughter was 15 that Nancy Meyers and Charles Shire decided to actually marry.
Back then, people used to say disparaging things about women and their success in Hollywood. She's so-and-so's wife, that's why she did it. She slept with this person, you know, so it was important to me that I wasn't his wife.
As a writing team, they were flop-free. Almost.
You had hit after hit after hit after hit, and then there was I Love Trouble.
I Love Trouble was you don't have to feel bad saying it. It's okay. Every movie can't work, you know, that's impossible.
They bounced right back with a hit Father of the Bride sequel, and Meyers' first directing effort, 1998's The Parent Trap. But it was around that time their marriage hit the rocks, and Nancy Meyers started writing solo.
I will hear what women think.
Whoa, lighten up in that aftershave, buddy.
I'm talking personal, private stuff. The stuff that nobody on earth is supposed to hear. I hear that stuff. Oh, dear God.
Her first project, What Women Want, starring Mel Gibson, did $180 million at the box office.
If you know what women want, the world can be yours.
You go, girl.
It was, at the time, the most successful film ever directed by a woman, and proof that Nancy Meyers could stand on her own.
For a recently divorced woman, being with Mel Gibson every day for months was a great thing. I do remember that, and also him always doing what I wanted, you know?
Then in 2003 came Something's Gotta Give, a romantic comedy with Jack Nicholson, who was 66 at the time, and Diane Keaton, who, at age 57, did her first nude scene.
It's interesting, though, that you didn't think, okay, I'm going to do something revolutionary
Oh,
here.
God, no, I didn't think about that at all. No, I didn't think about that at all. I really was trying to be funny. I mean, it really wasn't all that much deeper than that.
I do like sex. Oh.
It grossed over $124 million, proved that baby boomers can make a movie a box office hit, and cemented Meyers' reputation as a woman who knows what she wants.
You were the first woman to direct Jack Nicholson after something like 78 movies.
Was I the first woman?
Yeah.
That explains it. No, I'm kidding. No.
What was that experience like?
Challenging. He's challenging. He's brilliant. He's a very unique person. Sometimes I thought there was a battle of wills between us, to be honest. We learned to trust each other in a really good way, and I'm crazy about him. I love Jack Nicholson. I love him as he called me this morning, as a matter of fact.
At this point in her career, Meyers is sure enough of her success to even share her secret cheesecake recipe.
And it's about 30-some years old, and it's got a lot of butter stains and stuff, but there's something great about the way old recipes smell.
But maybe Nancy Meyers' real secret is this.
that is it.
A well-written comedy is ageless.
I think this is very French of us.
How is it French of us?
I have a young wife, but I am having sex with my old wife. My old, ex. I didn't mean old.
What are your thoughts on aging?
I feel great. I feel great. I look in the mirror like everybody my age, and I'm doing this, and I get it. I get the desire to wish it all looked better, But ultimately, I'm happy. It's all good. I see it as good. That's the truth.
169, take one.
Action! At 9 o'clock in the morning, Ishmail Merchant will tell you what's for lunch.
Spinach, cauliflower, ginger mustard chicken, pulao, and dal, my famous dal. Okay, just put some ginger.
He's cooking, you see, for 150, the entire cast and crew of the latest Merchant Ivory film, The Golden Bowl, based on the Henry James novel. Of the film's stars, Angelica Houston and Kate Beckinsale are on the set, plus Uma Thurman and Jeremy Northam. That's good. It's classic Merchant Ivory, period costumes, picturesque settings. On this particular day, the company has turned back the clock nearly a century on a street in London's East End.
So, Jim, we're going to shoot this time, Jim.
James Ivory is usually the director half of the Merchant Ivory team. Merchant, the producer.
Have you met Malita?
No. But his has always been a liberal interpretation of what the title producer means.
I know some of the actors who work with me, they call me the Godfather. I mean, not in the sense of the mafia godfather, but a godfather, which is nice, But if you look at this shot from here.
Officially, his job is to raise money to make the film and then get it shown in theaters. But Merchant isn't a conventional producer.
So we have to take cauliflowers and make it into small pieces.
And today, he is producing lunch.
You're going to feed all these people?
Yes, absolutely.
You're going to do the...
Yeah, you'll see.
And that's where his famous chicken curry comes in.
And these are my wonderful regular chefs. So I'm just the guest chef here today.
Word travels fast that Ishmail is cooking.
The plate is very, very hot.
What started 30 years ago as a gesture to thank the company for hard work Ishmael's curry parties, by popular demand, became a tradition.
Director's meal. Ishmael decided one night to just cook for the crew. From then on, he just kept doing it, and he's, on every film, there's some days in which he cooks.
What is important is to get the people emotionally involved, like you are working in a family.
For actress Kate Beckinsale, easing back into work after having her first baby, the family feeling is important.
It's funny and it's fun and it's nice to see your producer in a white apron doling out food for everybody. And it's nice. It's a sort of a family feeling.
Action! For stars like Uma Thurman, working on her first Merchant Ivory film, the tradition is a powerful attraction.
I've had my very first Ishmael curry lunch. Yes, I feel that I've been initiated into the Merchant Ivory tradition, almost.
It was delicious. It was quite fantastic. It's a lovely thing to do. It felt sort of personalized in a way.
But actor Jeremy Northam admits it wasn't Ishmael Merchant's cooking that attracted him.
Well, I wanted to play the part, and I loved the script. It was one of the best scripts that I read last year.
Many people have made films in 1930s and turn of the century and all of that. But our films, because they are so based on character-driven and so good in language and story, that's why you remember them.
But when people say it's like a Merchant Ivory film, you know what they mean.
Ladies and gentlemen.
A movie that tries to be like The Remains of the Day, for example.
Let us simply raise our glasses to Lord Darlington in gratitude for his magnificent hospitality.
The look is always lavish. The budget never is. Howard's End was made for $8 million, peanuts by Hollywood standards.
So you were that woman's lover?
Merchant Ivory Productions has released 45 films in 39 years.
I'm sorry, 10 years ago.
Ishmael Merchant always knew he wanted to make films. As a child in Bombay, he accompanied a movie star friend to an opening. That did it.
Everybody was throwing these huge, sort of buckets of marigolds at us. And we were submerged in marigolds. And I said, well, what a wonderful life this is. You make a movie, you come to the premiere, and people throw flowers at you. But there couldn't be anything better than that.
Not even cooking, although he'd probably admit food comes in a close second.
Perfect.
He discovered cooking as a college student in New York. 40 years later, he's even written cookbooks that are actually more like memoirs with recipes.
I notice you're not measuring.
No.
On the day we visit him at his home in upstate New York, he is producing lunch again, this time for friends.
Fresh catch of the day.
The menu: fish, lamb, dal, basmati rice out of his book, and an apple creation out of his head.
This is a new recipe we're creating now, just for CBS.
I see. And this is Apple Sunday Morning. It smells good.
As soon as everything is bubbling away in a pot or in the oven, he decides to walk me around the grounds.
Good. Well, this is a place which James Ivory and I got it about 20 years ago. And then we have also established a foundation here for the artists.
Ishmael Merchant manages to connect every piece of his life to every other piece. It's all one big Merchant Ivory production.
The space is utilized for concerts, for sculpture exhibition, for paintings. We open this door here and you can see the waterfall. It gives a wonderful feeling.
Is it true to say that your life and your work are one and the same?
Well, they have meshed together. And I don't want to have just a part of it. I want to have the whole life. All right, we are coming.
His movable feast of a life, he will tell you, came about because he hates to stay in hotels and misses cooking if he has to eat in too many restaurants.
Your earlier cookbook talks about Ishmael Merchant's passionate
meals.
Yes. Why was it important to add the word passionate to the title?
Everything you do has to have passion. Otherwise, what is the point of doing anything? I mean, even if you are in love, it has to be a passionate love. If you are eating something, it has to be a passionate meal. If you are doing something, making a movie, it has to be a passionate film. Otherwise, why do anything? Thank you. Cheers. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Now you always eat with your fingers?
Yeah, most of the time, unless I'm at a formal dinner or something, where I don't want to embarrass anyone.
This is the Indian style of
Yes,
eating?
oh yes.
Oh, it feels...
And on Ishmael Merchant's list of satisfactions, only one rivals feasting with friends.
Art department, please, or props. Action!
And that's making films.
So you still have all your posters up?
Well, we have many. I've collected many over the years.
Welcome to Hollywood East, Martin Scorsese's Manhattan office.
This is it.
This is it. Where he edits his films and screens old favorites. You have, of course, all your posters, as you
Jacques
always
Tourneur
do.
films. I like his films.
It's a wall-to-wall shrine to the greats of the past. And most of them are kind of the older directors.
I think for me, it's like just trying to stay in touch with that initial creative impulse and say, I want to do that. I want to do something like that. Or
something really different.
The inspiration. Yeah.
One inspiration, and the subject of Hugo, is the pioneering filmmaker George Méliès.
Méliès actually was a magician, and so he understood the possibilities of a motion picture camera.
Good night. Points for the attack.
Hugo is a tribute to Méliès. In the film, Scorsese shows just how the old magician did his tricks.
That's great. You can go. Pyrotechnics in, please. Knights, please don't move. Freeze.
Méliès, who directed over 500 films between 1896 and 1913, was the inventor of special effects. One of the things that I just loved in Hugo was seeing the old footage from Méliès. The hilarious, brilliant things that he shot. He really, the invention of humor on film.
Because he invented everything, basically. He invented it all. When you see these colored images moving, the way he composed these frames and what he did with the action, it's like looking at eliminated manuscripts moving.
But by the end of World War I, Méliès was a forgotten man, reduced to selling wind-up toys in a Paris train station. This is the book that the movie's based on.
We did this exactly, this shot.
That shot, you did.
Yeah, the eye too.
Hugo is an orphan who lives in a Paris train station that he rarely leaves, viewing the world from behind a giant clock.
This is what got me really interested in making the film, the way he's looking through the clock.
In the movie, it's Hugo who rediscovers Méliès and his films.
Come and dream with me.
In other words, it's a heartwarming children's movie with a happy ending. So, Hugo, no stabbings, no shootings, no gunfire, no one gets whacked. Is Martin Scorsese going soft on us?
Well, you know, have I mellowed in a sense? From what was the last picture, Shutter Island? I mean, for me, the story is something that opened up a whole new way of approaching cinema. But primarily, it really is a connection with the children.
A sweet connection with children? Are we talking Martin Scorsese? This is what you usually think of when you say directed by Martin Scorsese. Here he is at the Golden Globes, accepting the Best Director award for Hugo and explaining why he made the film.
And I have to thank my love to my wife, Helen, because we have a 12-year-old daughter, Francesca, her name is, and she said to me, why don't you, read this book, and why don't you make a film that our daughter could see for once? So we did. She's gotten older now.
Can I ask you how old you were when you had your...
late in life.
Yeah.
I think about 56, 57.
That must have been life-changing for you.
You know, it really is life-changing. I didn't quite understand. It's rediscovering the world through the kids.
This is such a different man from the one we first met in 1996 for a 60 Minutes profile. Everybody says, you want to know Marty Scorsese, go see his movies. Then you'll get him.
Yeah.
And your movies are so much about anger.
Yeah.
Now, are you that?
Always. I've been in a bad mood 25 years.
Back then, he took us to his old New York City neighborhood where he'd grown up a lonely and sickly child.
And you'd be right up here, looking out.
Yeah.
As a young boy, he was so ill with asthma, he spent a lot of time indoors at the movie theater. He couldn't go outside and roughhouse with the other kids. He could only watch them from his window.
Last time I interviewed you, we went to where you grew up, and you showed us that you spent all your time in that window.
That's right.
Looking out.
Interesting, yeah.
And there's Hugo up in this enclosed space, looking out through the numbers, but nevertheless. I thought he made a movie about himself.
I mean, that I think was the first connection. I love the idea of a young person who's unable to join in because of me with my asthma and that sort of thing. But I was able to. That third floor front window is sort of like a panoramic image of life.
The window frame was his movie screen, and while he observed life from up there, he began dreaming up films of his own.
Because of this illness, I really couldn't participate. I was always observing. I was in it, but at the same time, I really couldn't fully.
You were a voyeur,
yeah.
like Hugo.
Like Hugo, yeah.
But Scorsese is also like Meyers, the magician, who's always experimenting with the latest technologies, which is why Scorsese shot Hugo in 3D.
You're not going to see 3D like Avatar. You're not going to see things flying out at you.
No. I wanted to use 3D as another storytelling element. The way we're sitting here now is 3D. So why can't we use that as something? We use color, we use sound, we use movement. The way Meyers did it, he was inventing it as he went along, and we found ourselves in a similar situation with the 3D, because every time we put the camera in place, it was the added element of depth. It was like a tightrope. Once we started on it, we couldn't go back.
you at that point didn't know what you were going to get in the edit room. Wow.
We were wondering if the changes in Scorsese's personal life, happily married to his fifth wife Helen, attentive father, have spilled over into his work habits.
You know, when we interviewed you, you told us that you'd been angry for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that you were banging phones, breaking phones.
I still dislike phones, yeah.
You were a raging guy.
Yeah.
Do you still rage?
Yes, I think so. But what happens now is that I'll go off in a room, let me get past this, and move on. Figure out, okay, what are the facts? Forget the emotion.
I like this ending.
That's a nice ending, yeah.
Thelma Schoonmaker has been his editor for nearly 50 years.
You've done all those violent films. Look at you, and you're so nice.
She's been there when Scorsese has smashed editing machines.
He had a really bad temper.
Right. And when he was editing, the film would snag and break, and then he would get mad and he would hit the tiny little screen, thick glass, with his hand and break it. Oh. And so after a while, rental companies wouldn't rent to him anymore.
She's also seen the Scorsese who dotes on his 12-year-old daughter, Francesca, perhaps even grooming her for a spot in the family business.
Every Saturday he screens 2 films for her, and he carefully picks them. And I remember once she was sitting with me in the editing room waiting for him, and she just blurted out, "I love Charlie Chaplin." And I thought, oh my God. Marty couldn't think of anything he would want to hear more.
So you show your daughter and her friends a movie every weekend. Let me make one observation. In 16 years, as far as I can tell, you have not lost any passion for films, for watching them, making them, talking about them, and loving them.
Yeah.
So what's next for Martin Scorsese? Well, he's directing and producing HBO's Boardwalk Empire, and on the big screen, there's an upcoming film about Jesuits in 17th century Japan, and a Frank Sinatra biopic. Maybe even...
Do you think that you'll do something on the internet?
Yes, I would think so, yeah.
Really? Like an internet YouTube kind of movie?
I don't know. YouTube, you mean like a little cat? Like a little cat eating milk, drinking milk? No.
No.
I'm not going to do that.
With a narrative, with a story.
Oh, yeah. Well, you see, the thing is this. Wherever it can be shown, I'm open to trying, because right now we're at a time, at the same time, there's great transformations taking place in communication, the same way as the period of George Méliès.
very first image when I was writing the screenplay was the notion of shifting, of redefining an image and making you reconsider it from a different point of view.
The courage to shift and redefine imagery enabled writer-director Anthony Minghella to transform a lyrical and rhapsodic novel into an equally poetic and powerful film. When Minghella first read The English Patient, he was literally enchanted.
This transportation that the book has, this sense of, I think Time called it a magic carpet ride, and I felt that. I felt I'd been taken to some entirely new landscape.
You felt originally that it was just totally cinematic from the moment that you picked it up.
I did. I mean, I was seduced into thinking that, because what is the most obvious quality, there are two obvious qualities. One is this extraordinary lyricism in the language, extraordinary beauty of writing, but also Michael has his ability to conjure image.
He listens to her, swallowing her words like water.
Michael is Michael Ondaatje, author of the highly acclaimed novel The English Patient.
I carried Catherine Clifton into the desert, where there's a communal book of moonlight.
You know, a single line in Michael's writing conjures up a whole period or a whole quality. And what you do is fill in and imagine, and that's the great thrill of reading.
It is important to die in holy places. That was one of the secrets of the desert.
They're alone in the cave now. Do you promise?
I promise. I'll come back for you. I promise. I'll never leave you.
To write the screenplay, Minghella went off on his own without the book and worked his way back to it. The resulting film resonates with the original vision of Michael Ondaatje. When you knew that he was going to dismantle the book and piece it together again, filtered through his own sensibility, was there any anxiety?
Not at all. No, I mean, I think I wanted that to happen in a way. You know, I think the only way one can, in fact, make in some way a truthful film of a book is to kind of, you know, swallow the book in some kind of way and, you know, try and imagine it in a different kind of structure.
For me, the excitement was plunging into this enormously emotional reservoir, this well of feeling. And so what I wanted to do was to tap into that well and try and make some sense of it.
There are several love stories, but the central love story of Almashi and Catherine is so intense. It's a very different kind of love than we're used to seeing on film.
It's like a crustacean love. You know, you feel like these are people who can't approach each other directly. They come at each other like crabs, sideways. You know, that's what I felt. They're so uncomfortable, these two people, with this feeling.
I can't work. Can't sleep.
I feel this sense of resistance. It feels like the world closes them down into each other rather than them pursuing each other. They're both reluctant hostages to their emotion. And the reason why I think ultimately we're reaching a much wider audience than people imagined we would is because it categorizes love, and it says, look at the way that people can be for each other. This enormous capacity to hurt each other that we have, but also the capacity to heal each other with love. And there's great friendship in the film. There's great love of healing, love of a nurse for a patient. There's the love of country. There's also the love of internationalism. There's the love of exploring. So there's I think, this rosary of different ways of feeling, and I think that's what people are responding to.
Anthony, right here. The response to the film has been enormous.
Mr. Minghella, right here.
With big box office grosses, countless accolades, and 12 Oscar nominations, it seems unthinkable that moments before filming was to begin, major studio funding was abruptly withdrawn.
28, take 1, A camera.
producer Saul Zaentz was forced to stop everything.
We found ourselves in a place where they simply couldn't offer us enough money to make the film, and then we were abandoned. And we were all in Rome. The crew were there, the cast were there, the sets were being built.
The sticking point was Minghella's insistence that Kristen Scott Thomas play the lead. The studio wanted more of a guaranteed box office star. They wanted Demi Moore.
This is not the key. Your exit is not the key issue. All I did was sit in the other room on the phone all night to LA, calling every person I knew and every friend I knew, saying, "You've got to bail us out here. We've got to make this film. We're here. Don't abandon us."
Minghella and Zaentz prevailed. Other funding was found, and cameras rolled with Kristen Scott Thomas opposite co-star Ralph Fiennes.
This is not very good, is it?
No.
Will we be all right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yes is a comfort, absolutely is not.
Can you say what you think it is that has struck such a deep chord in people when they see the film?
I think it's the humanity of it, really. There's so many aspects of the human condition. There's lives emotionally broken apart and then emotionally put back together. It covers so many aspects of just living, of human existence, I think. And I think it covers them with precision and delicacy.
When you come over the brown, you're into this flat area to dip in again to get a piece of orange. I want to try and find ways, with the help of people like Saul Zaentz, to make films which subvert the notion of what you can do in cinema and which insist that emotion and thought are the primary colours of filmmaking and not any other obligation.
Oh, thank you.
It's true that we think of films that are being turned out now in Hollywood. So much of them have a clear morality, and it has to have a very neatly tied up ending. And you don't do that.
Well, I never see in life any clarity. There is no moral clarity in life. If you use fiction as some kind of reference point for your own behavior, if fiction reminds you that there's always more than one side to a story, there's almost always another angle in, another perspective into an event, that's what it seems its job is. So that's my position as a storyteller.
The International Sand Club. Misfits, buggers, fascists and fools. God bless us, everyone.
While the landscape of the English patient appears to be wars and politics and the boundaries they create and cross, it is more, much more.
I think that what the film suggests is that the consequences of individual betrayals, of loyalties, individual discourses, the way that we are in a room together, the way that we walk out of a door, that is what history is. It's not something going on outside of the room. It's not something somewhere else. It's what we are as people.
Perhaps the ability to reflect who we are as people, to mirror our deepest thoughts and feelings, defines the greatness of a film.
I've always loved you.
And perhaps that is why, when the despairing lovers of the English patient walk across a desert mountain ledge, without even knowing it, director Anthony Minghella was sending them into movie history.
And action!
If you want to get to know Quentin Tarantino, get to know his movies.
You know, my work is kind of unmistakably me, and I like that about him because I like me. But, you know, you're either going to really dig it or you're going to be against it.
For the past 17 years, moviegoers and critics have been digging or dodging the films of Quentin Tarantino. Tarantino has built, in celluloid, worlds known for low-life characters, snappy, cool dialogue.
Are you gonna bark all day, little doggy? Or are you gonna bite?
Quirky turns and twists. And of course, there's the violence. His latest, Inglourious Basterds, opening on Friday, adds history to the mix.
I'm putting together a special team. We're gonna be doing one thing and one thing only. Killing Nazis.
A band of Jewish American soldiers takes on the Germans during World War II. They even changed the course of history.
Hey, Donnie! Got a German here wants to die for country. Oblige him.
As always, Tarantino wrote the screenplay himself. And this time he says he had a problem.
I could not stop writing. I just, it was like I couldn't shut my brain off. I was just, I had, a new idea, a new character, a new twist. It might have been a miniseries, but it wasn't a movie. And then I even had to go through the whole thing of like, well, what does that mean? I'm too big for movies.
So what's the plan? We punch those goons out, take their machine guns, and burst in there, blast them.
Is that the plan?
That's about it.
The film, which clocks in at 2.5 hours, stars Brad Pitt.
Yeah, I totally wanted Brad Pitt, the actor, because he was just perfect for the character.
99999! Oh, yes.
And it's the characters, he says, who write this story.
They lead the way and I follow. And when they talk, I feel like I'm a court reporter, just, jotting it down.
Not a bad living for a guy who dropped out of school in the 9th grade. Quentin Tarantino was born in Knoxville in 1963. He moved to LA as a toddler with his mom after his parents parted ways. You might say his true home is a movie theater. In fact, he bought a Los Angeles revival house to keep it from closing.
If I didn't buy it, it would have ended up being a Fantastic Sam's or a Supercuts. And, we need this. We don't need more of that.
So you could have saved the day.
So to speak, yes.
Movies have been a part of Tarantino's life since he was a kid. He'd go with his mom and her new husband.
They didn't care about me seeing R-rated movies.
So what did you see?
Oh, I saw all kinds of stuff. Like the most intense double feature that I ever saw in my life, especially as a young person, was Deliverance and The Wild Bunch.
Holy moly, how old were you?
I was, let me see, I was in the 3rd grade.
Wow. After Tarantino quit school, he dabbled in acting.
And I just realized that I loved movies too much to simply appear in them. I wanted it'd be my movie. Aha. It's gonna be my film. One way or the other, good or bad, mine.
But instead of attending film school, Tarantino began to work in a video store and talked about movies all day long.
And it really developed my aesthetic because I was constantly defending movies and or not liking them and explaining why I didn't like them. And what I rejected from the movies coming out was just how cookie cutter they were, how safe they were.
Safe would not be a Tarantino adjective. He began writing in earnest and sold 2 bloody screenplays, True Romance and Natural Born Killers.
You listen to me! Are you clean?
With that springboard, Tarantino directed his first movie, 1992's Reservoir Dogs.
I don't tip because society says I have to. All right, I'll tip if somebody really deserves a tip. If they really put forth the effort, I'll give them something extra. But this tipping automatically, it's for the birds.
Played at Sundance, and it was the cause celeb that year. We didn't win anything, but it was talked about a lot. And I was kind of the groovy dude.
The film, about a bunch of gangsters and a jewel heist gone bad, caught the eye of producer Harvey Weinstein, then head of Miramax.
I saw a unique voice for American cinema, but I loved the voice in the script before I'd even met Quentin. I said, who wrote this? This is incredible.
And you know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese in Paris?
They don't call it a quarter pounder with cheese?
Oh man, they got the metric system. They wouldn't know what the quarter pounder is.
And what do they call it?
They call it Royale with cheese.
2 years later, Tarantino directed Pulp Fiction, and it was a cinematic event.
They furnished off an apartment with a 2-room robot sale.
The groundbreaking $8 million film, made over $200 million worldwide, revived the career of John Travolta and won an Oscar for Best Screenplay. Critics were gaga. Here's Roger Ebert, back when the film came out.
Rarely in our years on the movie beat has a new director become as hot, as fast as Quentin Tarantino. Even Martin Scorsese and Francis Coppola had warm-up periods.
You were compared to Orson Welles.
Well, I deserve that as far as I'm concerned. I have sibling rivalry with Orson Welles. I don't think he's that good. All right. Yeah, I have sibling rivalry with him and Stanley Kubrick. And that's all.
Are you being serious? Or are you being funny?
I am being funny, but I mean, I do admire them, but I also think I do have sibling rivalry there. They're not all that.
Karen James, culture critic for the website The Daily Beast, says the Tarantino-Wells comparison isn't fair to either.
I don't think that Quentin Tarantino really can be compared to anyone else. He really defines his own style and his own career.
Pulp Fiction, like his other films, is bloody. All kinds of bloody. With violence that's a strong cup of coffee for a Sunday morning. Take his 2003 film, Kill Bill.
Does it bother you, like for Kill Bill, I know you've said that there are 9 and 10-year-olds who love that film.
Oh, I love that.
You love that?
Of course I love that.
You don't think it sends a bad message that violence is cool?
Well, in movies, violence can be cool.
With each new movie, Tarantino's reputation grew, attracting all kinds of attention. Not all of it, at least to hear him tell it, welcomed. Tarantino was contacted by his biological father decades after he says he abandoned their family.
How was that received?
That was a drag. It was a drag. I mean, he had 30 years if he wanted to get in touch with me. Worst part about it is, it makes me wish I'd never taken the last name.
He was actually raised Quentin Zastupel, the name of his stepfather. He decided to take the last name Tarantino as a young actor.
If I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't go by the name of Tarantino.
As for a family of his own, Tarantino says he's single and content.
And I have to say, so far so good, as far as that's concerned. There is nothing more important to me than the movie I'm making.
At 46, with only 7 films to his name, he's a Hollywood heavy. And that's despite the fact that his last movie, Death Proof, was a box office disappointment.
How did that sit with you?
It hurt. I was like, it hurt my feelings. I felt like somebody broke up with me.
Same feeling.
Yeah.
Empty tummy.
It was like I got broken up, like the public broke up with me or something.
With Inglourious Basterds, Quentin Tarantino is about to find out if the relationship's back on. Regardless, he says he'll be in the game for a while.
Do you control the nicknames your enemies bestow on you? Aldo the Apache and the Little Man?
The German's nickname for me is the Little Man.
How long do you see yourself making movies?
I'm thinking around 60 would be a good time to put up the megaphone. And then I would become a man of letters. All right. Then I would that would be my time to write novels. Then would be a wonderful time to have children.
At 60.
At 60, yeah.
And no noise, let's roll.
But for now, it seems like Quentin Tarantino is pretty much devoted to one thing only, his movies. And given that, we asked for a little guidance.
Kill the Nazis!
If you were doing QT on QT, let's say you were putting together this little thing here, how would you end it?
Oh. Something very cheesy like, to be continued. To be bettered.
To be continued.
Quentin Tarantino, to be continued.
The world's first atomic explosion, July 16th, 1945, in the final weeks of World War II in the high desert of New Mexico.
We're at Ground Zero right now.
Alan Carr is the historian at the Los Alamos National Laboratory where the bomb was designed and built.
The sand melted in the fireball and rained back down to the ground, where it resolidified in the form of the mineral that we now call trinitite.
Trinitite, after the name of the site, Trinity.
Is that trinitite? Yes, this is a piece of trinitite.
Few people laughed. Few people cried.
Recalling the moment 20 years later, J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man history calls the father of the atomic bomb, said it brought to mind a line of Hindu scripture.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
I view Oppenheimer as the most important person who ever lived. Oppenheimer's story is one of the biggest stories imaginable.
Christopher Nolan has spent the last 3 years living in Oppenheimer's world, writing and directing the movie Oppenheimer, opening this week.
I don't know if we can be trusted with such a weapon. But we have no choice.
And by unleashing atomic power, he gave us the power to destroy ourselves that we've never had before. And that changes the human equation.
Nolan filmed it all using an IMAX camera.
Only IMAX film would really be worthy of the Trinity project. And this is what an IMAX film print looks like. So it's a giant frame there.
Yeah.
That's your regular, that's a 35mm.
This is the actual film.
It's 11 miles long, and it weighs 600 pounds.
Did you have qualms about what Hollywood would do to all your research?
Of course I did. Yes.
Kai Bird is co-author of a Pulitzer Prize-winning biography of Oppenheimer, on which the film is based.
It's complicated to take on a historic icon like Robert Oppenheimer and deal with the history faithfully and yet turn it into a cinematic experience.
For high-stakes human drama, it's hard to improve on the historical facts.
I know of no other story as dramatic as Oppenheimer and his involvement with the Manhattan Project.
All America's industrial might and scientific innovation connected here. A secret laboratory. Keep everyone there until it's done.
The Manhattan Project was the code name for the race to build the bomb. Played by Cillian Murphy, Oppenheimer was teaching graduate physics when he was recruited by a gruff Army general named Leslie Groves.
I don't take anything on trust.
Played by Matt Damon.
How would you proceed? You're talking about turning theory into a practical weapon system faster than the Nazis, who have a 12-month head start. 18.
Oppie was then, 38 years old, never managed anything more than his graduate students, and yet Groves selected him.
What did other people think of Groves' pick?
They thought it was outlandish.
Besides his lack of experience, Oppenheimer had communist connections.
It took him a long time to get a security clearance. His own wife, Kitty, had been a member of the party for a long time.
What did Groves think of that?
He thought that Oppie was the one to lead this project, and it was a brilliant choice. He could see in Oppie the smarts and the charisma to bring all these scientists together in this secret city and make it happen.
Initially, it was believed that it would only take about 130 people to get the job done here at Los Alamos. That number grew to 1,700.
Thrown together in what was then the Nowhereville of Los Alamos, the average age of the scientists was 29.
Boys and girls together, were there romances?
There were, and that became somewhat of a security problem here because before the project, essentially no one was born in this area. All of a sudden you've got 8, 10, 12 children being born every month. How do you hide that?
Are there traces of the person he was around here? I mean, there are a lot of martini glasses over there.
The martini glasses, you'll see ashtrays.
After shooting scenes in Oppenheimer's New Mexico home, Nolan donated the furnishings he had brought in to the Los Alamos Historical Society, but without the bugs placed by security officers suspicious of Oppenheimer's politics.
Was he under surveillance in his own house?
He was being watched for much of his employment in different ways. For instance, his phone was tapped at various times, and when he would talk to Kitty, they would occasionally make reference to the fact that they were probably being listened in on.
By the time Oppenheimer was ready to test what he called the gadget, Germany had already surrendered, but Japan fought on.
This was literally life and death because of every day that was going on in the war. Thousands and thousands of more people were being killed.
The gadget was hoisted to the top of a 100-foot tower, and the countdown began.
Did he have any famous last words before the test?
Oppenheimer supposedly said, "Lord, these affairs are difficult on the heart."
Oppenheimer was in a bunker 10,000 yards from ground zero.
There is a tremendous burst of light. You would have been watching it unfold in silence for dozens and dozens of seconds before the shockwave arrived. Imagine someone firing a pistol very close to you and somebody putting a leaf blower on high right in your face.
3 weeks after the test, an atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, then a second one on Nagasaki.
We had split the atom, we had changed the world.
The war was over, and Oppenheimer was the most famous scientist in the world. But that is only half the story.
He shortly afterwards plunged into deep depression. I think having read some of the news accounts of what had happened actually on the ground at Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Oppenheimer had built the weapon that ended the war, but he had also created a monster, which he warned would one day cause the world to curse the names Los Alamos and Hiroshima.
If there is another world war, this civilization may go under.
The national security establishment is appalled that the father of the atomic bomb is coming out in public giving speeches against these weapons.
Lewis Strauss, the chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, played by Robert Downey Jr., was bent on building more and bigger bombs than the Russians. And Oppenheimer was in his way.
The Russians have a bomb. We're supposed to be years ahead of them, but what were you guys doing at Los Alamos? Wasn't security tight?
Strauss managed to draw up an indictment that made it appear that Oppie's advice was politically motivated, that maybe he was a subversive, that maybe he was a secret communist, that maybe he was a spy.
Meeting behind closed doors, an Atomic Energy Commission security panel heard evidence, some of it gathered from illegal wiretaps, of Oppenheimer's communist past. They voted against him.
It's a terrible tragedy because here America's foremost scientist, a great public intellectual, is put on trial and stripped of his security clearance and then humiliated.
He retreated into academic exile at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey, home of Albert Einstein, who had tried to talk Oppenheimer out of fighting a battle he couldn't win.
Oppenheimer walks away from Einstein, and Albert Einstein turns to his secretary and says, "There goes a nar," the Yiddish for fool.
Has it ever been rectified?
This past year, December 2022, the Department of Energy formally vacated the entire clearance hearing. The message there is that this shouldn't have happened.
By then, Oppenheimer had long since passed away. So he remains, as the title of his biography says, the American Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods and was tortured ever after. But it's not a myth.
And they won't understand it until they've used it.
Oppenheimer was at the center of a set of events that changed the world forever. Like it or not, we still live in his world, and we always will.